Tower Defense Simulator, also known as TDS, is a popular tower defense game on Roblox that was released back in June of 2019. The game has been out for more than 3 years and is soon approaching its 4th anniversary. I've played TDS since release and seen the game grow with time. Despite what people might be thinking, the game did actually evolve from how it was back in 2019 and 2020. However, the game is still filled with a lot of problems, including bugs, flawed game mechanics, poor balancing, monetization, and other kind of issues, and today I want to discuss not only the game itself, but also the community surrounding it. Even if I made the decision to retire, I still want this video to serve as a deeper dive into the core issues of TDS. I will also try to provide solutions whenever possible. However, I'm not a developer for the game, so I can't know if the stuff I say would be possible to implement or not. So, without further explanations, let's begin. When you join TDS for the first time, you are greeted with your daily reward of 50 coins, a list of the most recent patch notes, and that's about it. There isn't really a tutorial or anything except for the board that tells you a bit of information about how the game works, but that's about it. You might find a shop, however, you cannot buy anything yet because you have no coins. When you decide to play your first game, you will be met with two options, matchmaking and elevators. If you try the matchmaking, you will most likely get queued up with other new and clueless players. And if you try the elevators, you will probably get avoided by pretty much everyone in the lobby because they will see that you are level 0. So for now, matchmaking will be your best choice. You queue up and get into a game. After voting the map, you'll see that you can vote between normal mode and molten. Now, the most obvious choice would be to vote normal, right? So you do that. But everyone else votes molten. You're a little bit confused, but you don't mind too much. The first few waves go on smoothly until you reach later waves when you can see the difficulty rising. In spite of your best efforts, you die on wave 32 and get a whopping 270 coins and 60 XP. Well, that's not really a great start. Sure, you can buy either Paintballer or Demoman now, or maybe a Soldier if you survive a bit longer, but that's about it. Depending on what kind of player you are, you will either 1. Search on YouTube for tips on how to play the game and either find clickbait garbage or some actual guides, or continue playing without much of an idea on what to do next. If you decide to check some guides, then you will see that all videos will tell you to play Molten, get farm an ace, and expand from there. If the last game didn't turn you off from playing, great! Now have fun playing Molten with randoms for 3 to 4 hours until you can actually afford the towers needed to win by yourself consistently. At this point, you're probably past level 10, so you can actually play Fallen. Unless people voted Fallen when you wanted to play Molten, cause yeah, that can happen. However, you decide against it and play some more Molten games to get some more gold. But let's say that after a couple of hours you decide to get Commander, Ranger, DJ, and go to try out Fallen mode. You might fail a few times, which is completely reasonable, but you eventually win. At that point, you're on your way to the mid-game of TDS, where you get to play special maps to obtain new towers until you eventually get to hardcore mode. At this point, you're already way past the beginner phase, so we'll end this here. Now, you might say that, oh, this doesn't sound too bad. Well, yes, it's not terrible when you actually know what you're doing, but even when you know, it takes a long time to obtain all the things you need, and I don't think anyone wants to play 20 to 30 hours to be able to get most of the coin towers. That is simply not fun nor engaging. Let's not forget that at least half of the players are for sure not going out of their way to look up a tutorial on how to play the game or a wiki, because you shouldn't have to do that in the first place. Now, thankfully in 2022 there have been a lot of reworks to the weaker towers, but there are still a lot of towers left in the dust like Hunter, Freezer, Paintballer. Wait, they want to actually remove it? Huh, that's fair I guess. Hell, I'm more than sure that there are some players who probably quit because they bought some terrible tower like Hunter, used it, realized it's shit, and just decided it's not worth to play further. Now, I'm actually going to excuse the devs for not adding a proper tutorial because the game is simple enough that basically anyone could understand what's going on. However, even if the game is extremely simple, there should still be something more than just a board that tells you only 2 words about the game. There's also the commander dialogue, which is a whole meta on its own, having horribly outdated tips and generally bad understanding of the game. Like, if your only way of teaching the player becomes such a meme, you know something isn't right. Overall, there's a lot of things that make the beginner experience quite rough, most of them having to do with how slow you progress during the early game. You have no good towers, and if you want to play with more people, you will realize that the eco is horrible without farm, which in my opinion should be available by default, even if the starters don't cost that much to max. At least that would make the experience slightly more enjoyable. Also, this is a no-brainer, but normal Molten are in desperate need of a rework. Normal is too difficult to be considered the easy mode of TDS, and Molten is the opposite, being easier than should be for an intermediate mode. As for the slow grinding during the early stages of the game, I suggest the addition of daily quests to give the player a small boost in cash, and those quests could depend on the player's level to make sure they aren't too difficult for the new players. The map scoring system should also get changed because it has been broken for 2 years now, like, come on. And there are some things that you can do with it. My idea is to give the player double rewards whenever they complete a map on a specific mode for the first time, and to change the rewards to be based on the map difficulty. This would motivate people to play new and hard maps to be able to gain coins and XP much quicker than before. Now that we finished discussing about the beginners, let's move on to the game design. TDS has a lot of things that shape up how the game works right now. The most basic elements are towers, enemies, game modes, and cosmetics. I would say TDS has a good variety of towers, a lot of enemy types, quite a few game modes, and a lot of skins. However, behind all of those is the incentive for grinding, and oh boy, grinding in this game fucking blows. I already discussed how tedious the grinding is for beginners, but don't worry, as it gets much worse from there. For starters, to obtain all the basic towers in the game, including Warden, you'll need about 46,900 coins. To the average player, that will take around 20 to 30 hours from level 0, and that is if they get around 1,500 coins an hour minimum. However, after grinding that absurd amount of coins, players can now finally play hardcore and get both Accelerator and Engineer. Both towers cost in total 7,000 gems, and the time needed to get them can heavily vary depending on how you decide to grind. The intended way is to try and hardcore, of course, which, if done fast enough, can get you around 500 gems an hour without special towers. That would be around 40 hours, but keep in mind as this is the best possible scenario because no level 50 would instantly know what to do in the mode. There is, however, a second way to grind for those towers, and that is loose grinding. Despite being extremely inefficient compared to the first option, a lot of people still practice it because it's more convenient. Now, the most amount of gems you can get an hour by loose grinding is about 300, which isn't too bad. However, you gotta consider the fact that a lot of people don't know how to grind properly, so the actual number is more around 200 to 250 an hour, if not even lower. That can make the total amount of time required vary from 28 hours up to 35 hours. The whole grind for hardcore towers can take more than all the coin towers, and keep in mind there are only 2 hardcore towers in the game so far, and there will probably be more. But why would people do the slower option? Well, you see, hardcore is a team-based mode. You need a proper strategy if you want to beat the whole mode. The easiest way to get a team is via the official Discord server. That will not be a problem by itself until you realize that you need to be 13 in order to have a Discord account. And the exclusive hardcore lobby has been removed a long while ago, resulting in people begging to play hardcore in public lobbies. This generates a problem where some people have to go a much more difficult path than others for the same result. Locking skins or badges behind tough challenges, for example, wouldn't really be a problem as they are only cosmetics, but locking 2 of the best late game towers behind hardcore isn't really a great idea. Like, hell, I was one of the people who just told people to get a team to play hardcore, use a strategy and win, but I failed to realize that the reason why so many people lose grind is because they aren't able to play with others through a convenient manner. However, we can all hope that once matchmaking gets more developed, we will be able to have a special server type only for hardcore so people can actually find a team without needing a third-party alternative. However, the problem with grinding gets much worse from there, because we have golden skins. For the whopping price of 50,000 coins, you can get a buff version of an already existing tower. How exciting. Just hope you didn't buy Soldier or claim Crookbots before, because those towers have a golden skin themselves, and oh boy they suck hard. They barely improve the tower itself, are outclassed by other choices, and waste you at minimum only a dozen hours of your life each. That's right, you only need a minimum of 12 hours to get each of the golden skins. That equates to about 72 hours minimum to get all 6 of them. And with all the other towers, it's only like 72 plus 14 plus 20, only about 106 hours minimum to get everything in TDS. But hey, it's still less than Sigito, so you know. Okay, but seriously, what the fuck? 106 hours might not sound that much on paper, but that's because I took the best of the best cases. For most players, that time will be 3 times higher most of the time, and not everyone will grind every second they play the game because that is simply not fun. Now, there will probably be some nerds saying stuff like, oh, but golden skins are made for laking players. Shut up, okay? I'd be fine if the grind was for cosmetics, cause you know, you can just do it later as an extra to show the time investment, but it's another problem when towers are locked behind such a tedious grind. Now, yes, you can beat all the maps and all the game modes without needing golden towers, but attempting to do so is a lot harder, and the role of the golden skins is to make some aspects less tedious. However, that creates another problem with the towers themselves. The problem is that it leaves the tower themselves pretty mediocre, for example Pyro, Crook Boss and Soldier. However, with the golden skin they are actually pretty decent. A good example would be Pyro. The tower itself isn't really special, but with the golden skin it's pretty much meta in hardcore. If your team doesn't have golden Pyro, then you will have a much more difficult time during the early game in the form of microing snipers targeting or using a much more complex combination of normal Pyro and ace bombs. However, we will discuss those things at the game balancing section, so yeah, let's move on. Anyway, moving on from grinding, let's discuss event towers. Simply put, they are a shit concept. Limiting stuff to a small period of time is almost never a good idea conceptually, but we live in 2023, so if your game doesn't have anything to produce the fear of missing out, then people would call it game dead, so yeah. Event towers are obtainable from, well, events. They are only obtainable for the duration of the event and whenever the developers decide to sell it again as a game pass. The problem is that if you start playing the game recently and haven't experienced a single event yet, you'll have no free way to get those towers. But the number of event towers isn't something small like 2 or 3, it's 10. 10 fucking exclusive and unobtainable towers. For reference, there are 38 towers in total, not including golden skins, meaning that the event towers make up more than 25% of the total amount of towers. That's a lot of content just being thrown away only to be resold later. The problem is that there are some event towers that are so strong that they are considered superior to the free versions of themselves, those towers being Gladiator, Sledger, Elf Camp and situationally Swarmer. Those towers can be pretty useful both in normal gameplay but also challenges and speedruns, forming a sort of gatekeeping system simply by existing. The Gladiator is by far the worst offender, being one of the best towers for speedrunning. That's why you probably met people asking to do things like Quick Draw, which is a speedrun challenge for Battlelands, and put Gladiator as a requirement to join the team. The devs themselves have stated that they will slow down with the events back in 2022 when Duck Hunt came out, and they have somewhat kept their promise. In 2022 we had only 2 events and 1 event tower. However, I think all the current event towers should be obtainable for free in some way or another without having to pay money for them. For example, Polluted Wasteland doesn't have any interesting rewards for beating it, which could give the opportunity for something like Toxic Gunner to become an unlockable tower for that map. Tower Blaze does that pretty well, even if it's pretty tough and grindy. At least the option is there for players who didn't have time to do it when the event was out, or for those who started playing long time after the event took place. Next up on the list are cosmetics. Skins in TDS are overall good quality, but there are a few which are still broken to this day. The big issue, however, comes from how you obtain the said skins. You have skin crates which have a random chance to give you the skin you want because we love gambling. They did, however, add the option to buy a specific skin you want, but unless it's a common skin, you have to pay a lot more for only one skin. and sometimes the prices are double if not triple the original price. I mean, sure, better stuff can cost a little more, but you're better off just buying the skin crates at this point if they're that expensive. I sure wonder what other game had extremely pricey skins for no reason and also removed loot boxes. I don't really like the idea of skin crates because of the gambling aspect, but the current skin shop isn't any better either. I would prefer the skin crates to be removed and instead have all skins buyable at any given time, but I feel they might keep the absurd prices that are right now, and I don't think anyone wants to pay 800 Robux for Neko DJ. The other way to obtain skins is via the Season Pass, which is just a fancy way of saying Battle Pass. They used to have some really grindy Season Passes like the Halloween 2021 and the Duck Hunt 2022 one. This one was actually so bad that I used a macro to get the engineer skins, so yeah. However, they seem to have taken the decision to make them less tedious by making the Season Pass currency obtainable by simply playing the game instead of having to play the event only. And to be honest, the time needed to get all the skins is also pretty manageable, taking less than 10 hours most of the time to get all of them, and considering most season passes last a month or so, I think the system is decent enough. Another big aspect I want to touch on is the monetization of TDS. To say that the Roblox shop is coming would be an understatement. From all the things you can buy, only the VIP doesn't feel like a total ripoff. The thing that most people think about when they hear about TDS monetization are the 4 viable level lock towers. The Crook boss is a piece of shit of a tower, arguably performs worse than Soldier, yet it costs 400 Robux to unlock it. Considering that you can unlock the tower pretty early on at level 30, and how shit it is, it should under no circumstance be so expensive to purchase. Next up is the turret, which isn't really terrible by its own, but Minigun just makes everything the turret does but for cheaper and without the tower limit. Costing 800 Robux is a lot when you can just buy minigun with only coins for half the amount. The third tower is the morgue, which is purely a troll tower, like holy shit, you're being scammed big time if you buy this thing. Even the devs know it's a piece of shit if they made it cheaper than turret by 100 Robux, like bro. Finally the pursuit, which costs 1500 Robux, and it's not as dog shit as the others, but it is weak considering how much you have to spend on it. With 1500 Robux you can buy 7000 coins, get farm Ace Commander and Ranger, play a bit more than buy DJ, and win 90% of the maps on Solo Fallen. Like, I don't think I speak only for myself when I say that all level towers are a big scam and they shouldn't be put on sale at all in their current state. As for other towers you can buy, there's the Cowboy, which isn't really that bad considering it costs 450 Robux and is good enough to be usable even when you are a high level, so I think it's a pretty good investment as long as you can't beat Badlands. Next up is Warden, which costs 800 Robux and same as Cowboy, unless you really struggle with Pizza Party, don't buy it. The tower itself is pretty mediocre, however, being only usable for molten speedrunning on specific maps with specific setups. The next tower that is buyable is the Engineer for the very low price of 4000 Robux. I don't really have an issue with towers being sold as long as they are available for everyone and don't instantly win you the game, but I also don't agree with the idea of selling towers this expensive. 4000 Robux is well over $40 unless inflation decides to kick in even more. Having stuff this expensive in a game like this feels wrong because it's such a huge purchase in a game played by mostly kids. Now, I'm not gonna be like, oh, but think of the children because that's dumb, but like, the price is actually absurd and just comes off as scummy. Either way, the last game pieces are the custom music on DJ, which is actually broken ever since Roblox pushed the music update and you cannot play copyrighted music anymore. And resizing and the meme emotes, which are all fine in my opinion as they are purely cosmetic. The overall design of TDS plays more or less like an average Roblox simulator, where you start off as weak and painfully grind your way up until you have everything obtained. After that, a lot of people might feel no incentive to play further and call the game repetitive. That's because the game doesn't really encourage you to replay the game more than a few times. There are only 2 challenges in the game right now, Quick Draw for Badlands and Lost Souls for Pizza Party. Quick Draw could be considered pretty hard, but Lost Souls feels so systematic that you can pull up a macro and still win. And those are pretty much the only challenges that you can do for any sort of reward in TDS. There used to be Platinum skins which you could obtain from beating 5 maps on all difficulties, and they were a weaker version of Golden skins, but those got removed in mid-2020. I think it would contribute significantly to add more rewards for beating other maps aside from the extra resources I suggested previously to the beginner side. There are a few badges which were leaked back in 2020 and haven't been released since, and I don't really understand why they don't just add them, because they could be some fun little changes, right? Alright, but speaking of maps, I think a contributing factor to the repetitiveness of the game is the lack of interesting maps. Most maps play the same, and the only exceptions I can think of are Lay-By with Deadhead, which significantly reduces your ability to grid early game and place the towers in good spots, Metal Arch, which actually favors towers like Pyro, Engineer, Gladiator, and Winter Stronghold, which makes you defend two paths, but even that map is barely considered unique because the two paths are too close to each other. And yeah, sure, there is Inferno, Candy Valley, which just intersect them, but those are more boring, so yeah. The only things that currently make the maps different are the length and the amount of paths, which is just not enough to make for interesting gameplay. Believe me, I really like the new map remakes and stuff like that, but I feel like map builders should focus a bit more on the gameplay side of things. The final thing I want to talk about on this topic is the gameplay. For most part, it's pretty straightforward. You place towers, farm, get a decent economy, and upgrade said towers. However, there are smaller bits that affect the general gameplay. The biggest one is the in-game economy. You start off with $500 or $600 if you are in the Paradoxum game group. Okay, but generally, why the fuck do you have to join the group just for 100? That doesn't really make sense, but whatever. Anyway, after that we have the wave economy. Each wave you get more and more cash to spend on towers. This varies from mode to mode, but usually the bigger amount of players, the smaller amount of cash you get per wave. Then there's the damage income. For each damage point you deal, you get $1. However, if you play with multiple people, it works a bit different. The person that does damage receives 100% of the cash for the damage dealt, however the rest of the players will also get 25% themselves, even if they didn't contribute in any way to killing the enemies. This does not apply for hardcore mode, however, as in this mode you get cash purely from your towers doing damage. There's another twist to this mode, which is that you get the money from damaging an enemy only after the said enemy dies. For normal modes, the 25% cash can be insanely good to farm up a shit ton of money quickly while having only 1 or 2 people defending. This makes getting expensive towers much easier, resulting in the mode feeling way too easy when with multiple people. I think all modes should function in a way like hardcore does, getting cash from the damage you deal only. However, they can keep the gimmick of having to kill the enemy to receive the cash exclusive to hardcore. Although I wouldn't really mind if bosses in hardcore got changed so they are the only type of enemy giving cash instantly after doing damage and not having to kill them to get the cash, because the money received from Void River are completely useless because he's the last enemy in the whole mode. The last type of economy is the tower economy, which is provided by Farm and Cowboy. Farm generates money at the start of each wave and nothing else, while Cowboy does damage and gives a set amount of cash every few shots, and there's also DJ, which reduces the cost of other towers, including their upgrades. I would say Farm isn't too problematic, but Cowboy and DJ definitely are. Cowboy, being a defense eco hybrid, allows for maximum flexibility, especially when playing solo, but it can also be used when playing with multiple people, meaning you can bring both Farm and an early game tower in one slot. DJ is also a problem for the reason that it reduces the price way too much, especially for late game towers, allowing people to bring very expensive towers and still affording to max them. Another factor that influences the gameplay is the RNG system some enemies have. Currently, all bosses in the game have their attacks randomized. This means that the time interval between each attack can vary, but also the attack choice. This can very much decide whether you will survive or die in some scenarios, especially in Polluted Wasteland and Hardcore. Even worse, not all attacks are equal in strength. For example, the Nuclear Monster has multiple attacks that barely have any effect on the towers, but the Summon ability is 10 times stronger and more devastating than any of the others because of the absurd amount of enemies that the attack spawns and the rage reduction that comes with it. Having the option to restart at the last wave for a small fee would be amazing, since it would mean you can try tough and long modes without having to go through the painful process of repeating the first 40 or 50 waves again. Aside from that, there are mysteries which can spawn most of the enemies seen in previous waves. Some enemies like Fallen Hero can spawn a wave earlier, but they are the only exception, I think. But this also causes a huge problem because you can either defend easily with minimal defense or barely survive with a defense double the size. Fortunately, mysteries are slowly getting removed from more and more maps and replaced with the beta version of mysteries, aka the breakers. Even if the transition is slow, it's better than nothing. The last aspect that affects the gameplay are the modes and the towers. Those two will take quite a bit to cover, so they will be put into the next chapter titled the Game Balance. Game balancing is a difficult topic to discuss because each person sees the game in a different way. Each person can have objective and subjective opinions on the topic, meaning that there's no such thing as a perfect method on how to tackle game balance. When balancing towers, there are a few main things to take into account, those being the cost, raw stats, what role they pursue, situational benefits, and abilities. The cost stat covers how much it costs to unlock the tower, the placement cost, and the cost of the upgrades. Raw stats represent the damage, the fire rate, the range, what kind of enemies the tower can damage, and in the case of support towers, the type of support they offer and the tower limit. The role of one tower can be to defend the early, mid, or late game, grant support to other towers, or to debuff enemies. Situational benefits are passives that can be used in specific scenarios like the slash and knife throw at level 2, and abilities are the mechanic which allows towers to become stronger or to provide the stronger boss for a short period of time, or even to use a special attack for extra damage. I have mentioned the fact that towers are balanced around their cost to unlock. This is actually common in TDS because, as an example, Scout, which is free, gets outclassed by Soldier, which costs 350 gold, and Soldier gets outclassed by Militian, which costs 2000 gold. However, I think balancing towers around the cost to unlock is a poor approach that results in beginners feeling very weak during the early game. To have a balanced tower defense game, all towers should be considered equal and all take raw stats into consideration. This ensures that the game is fair for both the new players but also the veterans. This is considered quite an unpopular opinion, however, because people value their time and expect to get something stronger for the time and effort put into the game. This is a result of the progression system of TDS being so obnoxious, meaning that this problem will probably never go away simply because the game's foundation is built on grinding for better towers to beat harder modes and to unlock every single tower and skin possible. Okay, but let's ignore all the grinding and shit and look at purely how the towers perform. Most of them do a decent job at what they are intended for, however there are some towers which do their job either really good or really bad. The term OP or overpowered is commonplace when the topic is game balancing. In the case of TDS, we have towers like Ace Pilot, Cowboy, Commander, DJ, and Engineer who perform really well with little to no drawbacks. On the other side of things, however, we have towers like Rocketeer, Hunter, Mortar, Paintballer, which are all considered jokes by pretty much everyone in the community. Over the past year, we have seen a lot of previously bad or mediocre towers getting rebalanced like Sniper, Soldier, Militian, Cowboy, Ranger, Demoman, and more. However, there are cases where some towers have been buffed out of proportion, which is the case for Cowboy, or have been barely changed when compared to previous versions, for example Soldier. Okay, but seriously though, Soldier has been good for like 2 weeks then went back to being mediocre. What happened? Personally, I think TDS needs to have monthly balance updates to feel refreshing, not only for bad towers but also the good and even overpowered ones to ensure that the game's meta isn't getting stale. This is a difficult request, however, as how TDS currently works doesn't allow for quick stat changes from what I understand, making both the devs and the game balancers less willing to experiment with interesting ideas. But how about the gamers though? Well, there are 3 main game modes, 3 special maps, and hardcore mode. When balancing a mode, it's important to know the target difficulty, aka if a mode is supposed to be easy or hard, and to also maintain a somewhat linear increase in difficulty as the match goes on. This is not the case in any of the mentioned modes, however, as all of them have some cases where the difficulty is significantly smaller compared to the previous waves, or the difficulty suddenly spikes up and you realize you need a lot more defense. 2 good examples are Wave 11 and Wave 9 for Fallen, and Wave 24 and 25 in Hardcore. Wave 11 is literally a carbon copy of Wave 9 with only 20 extra HP worth of enemies, while Wave 24 and 25 in Hardcore have tanky enemies approaching your base, previous waves having less than 1 mega slow worth of HP. Wave 24 and 25 are so difficult in fact that they become the most feared part of not only Hardcore but the entire game. But let's take each mode and see what flaws they have each and how they could be improved. The first up is Normal mode. Normal mode is considered the worst mode to play on, and for good reasons. Garbage rewards, a lot of difficulty spikes, and not beginner friendly at all. Considering this is supposed to be the easiest mode, it doesn't feel like it at all. To fix this, there should be a more linear wave structure, which can be done by delaying all the major enemy appearances by 1 or 2 waves and reducing the amount of swarms. Making the wave income bigger should also be taken into account to ensure that you can get at least 30 to 35 max snipers worth of cash by the time Grave Digger spawns. And for the last change, increasing the rewards to 350 gold would be really nice. Boulder mode is known for being the easiest mode in all of TDS. Not only that, but it's also good for grinding coins without much effort. The problem with this mode is that it should be harder than normal but easier than Fallen. There should be more modern related enemies, which could also be stronger than the current enemies the mode has. Fallen mode is considered to be the most balanced one out of the main 3. However, it still has some small issues like the difficulty not being linear and Fallen Guardians being very strong when compared to the Fallen King. All it would need is some enemy tweaks and some wave changes. Hardcore is the only mode that has increased the prices for towers and upgrades. That is one aspect that makes it stand out because it makes the early game much tougher than all the previous modes combined. However, during the mid game there are a lot of filler waves present, mostly between wave 37 and 43, and the mode usually drags for quite too long. So I think reducing the amount of waves from 50 to 45 would be a nice change, while making sure the total amount of cash earned from damaging enemies remains consistent. Pizza Party plays a lot like a normal Fallen game, except with tougher enemies and the presence of mutation. Pizza Party needs some changes to the wave structure and some enemies to have different mechanics to make them seem less dull. The rewards can also feel way too good considering that it is much harder than Fallen, so reducing them slightly below 1000 could be a good idea to encourage people to play other modes. Balance is the only map with a 3-way path, meaning triple the enemies because of the all path modifier. Even with this feature, it has the exact same structure as the Fallen mode, just with some cowboy hats and some enemies looking slightly different. There should be slightly more unique enemy types, however that could also ruin the quick draw mode, so changes would have to be playtested properly. And finally, Polluted Wasteland. And unfortunately, this is the most unbalanced mode out of all, even more unbalanced than normal mode. Waves 11 to 18 are all a massive filler, only for wave 22 to be one of the biggest difficulty spikes in the entirety of TDS. After that there are only waves 28 and 40 which are considered difficult. The Nuclear Monster is also by far the worst boss in the entire game from a balancing standpoint, being capable of ruining your run even with an amazing setup and good micro by sheer bad luck. The mode doesn't require much strategy outside of the tower selection and micro on wave 40. Because you make so much money from damaging enemies, you can see people bringing 3 main DPS towers and still affording to max all of them. The whole mode is just a DPS check. One way I suggest to rework the mode would be to change the wave structure in a way so you need more defense early game, slightly making the mid game easier, and adding a global price increase of 25% to all towers, ensuring that people manage their money well and don't just spam whatever shit they want. On a final note, increasing the rewards slightly would be amazing since people would have to choose between Pizza Party and Badlands, which are easier but gives more rewards, or Polluted Wasteland, which is harder but gives bigger rewards. In a balanced tower defense game, all towers will be viable in at least one scenario to all levels of play. There are cases where some towers are viable in niche cases like Molten Speedruns, where Warden becomes very good at spawn killing, or another case Quick Draw where Soldier and Shotgunner are viable options to speedrun the early game if the players select stuff like Gun Scout or Gladiator. Overall, do I think that TDS will ever become a game that is somewhat balanced? No. Simply put, the devs have other priorities and the game balancing is definitely not a primary one. And even if the game was to be balanced, a lot of people would complain either way. We already saw that with the accelerator nerfs, so yeah, speaking of that, let's move on to the next topic, the community. How you perceive the community greatly depends on your experiences with it. My opinions on it will be subjective, but I'm gonna try my best to stay neutral, even though I know I'm gonna fail to do so. So, yeah. I would say the community has many subgroups. For the more casual players, there are people who simply play the game normally, cosplayers, artists, etc. There are also competitive players like speedrunners, completionists, collectors, and others. Obviously, because TDS is a popular Roblox game, it should be expected to meet some more immature people. It's not really a thing that can be changed because, yeah, it's Roblox. However, I would lie if I said that I don't dislike the majority of the community. It's mostly the players who are casuals. I don't have anything with not taking a game seriously, like hell, even I do that with other games. But it's another thing when those people ask for things clearly not meant to be done by everyone. This comes in the form of challenges. Currently the most known challenge is solo hardcore. It is difficult to achieve this task simply because you need a good understanding of the game and good RNG. However, here come the people who want a strategy to complete the solo hardcore. And that's kind of the problem. You can't just follow a few steps and expect to win. It's a way to measure your knowledge of the game, and luck of course, not how well you can read the document. Although if I'm being honest, some people really can't do that either, like, come on. And that's the reason why I highly dislike strategies in general. People don't use them to give them an idea on how to play a certain mode or challenge. 99% of the players just copy-paste whatever is written without even questioning it. A pure example would be the Super Cat strategy, a troll strategy which was made purely to test the intelligence of TDS players. And guess what? It fooled way more people than expected, and the worst part is that it used these loadouts? Who the fuck would use Hunter, Scout or Sniper in Quick Draw? Paintball and Shotgunner could make sense considering it was a quick draw strat and I used them as well, but still, it proves how easily people can be fooled. Speaking of strategies, a lot of them don't deserve their popularity, or lack of popularity for the other side of the coin. The Tiki Hardcore strategy was infamous in the community for half a year when it first released, and at the time it was pretty good. However, as more and more things were discovered about the game, it was made clear that the strategy needed an update. However, even after numerous strategies have been made that were more efficient and more accessible, Tiki still maintained the spot for most popular strategy until the Christmas 2022 update. Another kind of strategy is the Day 1 release one, which usually appears whenever a new mode or event is released. Those usually become very popular for a while, however the problem is that they are rushed and unoptimized, which can result in a lot of missing steps. Unfortunately, they will always exist, however people should become more knowledgeable about what makes a strategy good or not in general. This way, strategies that have been worked on with care, patience, and that actually deserve it can rise to be used by a good chunk of the player base. Another aspect I want to touch on is the YouTube community, and simply put, it is much different from other Roblox games. What I mean by that is that it doesn't really matter the quality of the videos, but rather how frequent you can upload. Of course, there are examples of actually well done videos, but 90% of the videos are either some unfunny meme or challenge number 3000. But even with those, a meme can be really well edited or a challenge can be really tough to beat. But the sad part is that you can't really do anything interesting around TDS, as the average viewer will most likely view it on autoplay and disregard the quality as long as it gives them dopamine hits. There have been people who try to make interesting videos on TDS only to receive close to no recognition for it, and it sucks to see, but you cannot really change the mind of the majority, unfortunately. That's just how the Roblox YouTube scene is overall, so... For the final topic of this video, because my fucking god, it's already 40 minutes almost, I want to discuss achievements, both official ones and the ones made by the community. I know this is a rather niche topic, but I want to discuss it a bit as well. TDS doesn't have many interesting official achievements or badges. The only things that are in the game are small rewards for beating any of the main modes for the first time, unlockable towers and skin crates. There are only two challenges I would call actual achievements, those being Quick Draw and Lost Souls. They both give a special skin and a badge, and that's about it. And for leaderboards, instead of having something competitive like trying to have the fastest run on a specific mode or map, there are Triumph and XP leaderboards, which only encourage grinding and even macroing the game instead of skill and knowledge of the game. As mentioned earlier, the community has made challenges of their own to push the game to its limits. Most of them are niche, however, resulting in a small amount of people seeing them or even caring about them, even less if you aren't a person with a sizable following. That's why it's so hard for good players to feel rewarded for achieving something simply because the game rewards boring grinding most of the time. Thankfully, the community has made good use of the lack of in-game achievements and made their own. There is an entire speedrun.com page for TDS that keeps track of almost every run submitted. Not only that, there are also documents that keep track of those records. There is also Solo Hardcore, which has been the main challenge for every good player for the past few months and resulting in the creation of the Voice Splitter role. This is also the first time an unofficial role has been created to congratulate people who put in the effort to be such a difficult task. There are also more niche challenges like trying to beat as many modes as possible without special towers, which has been on the rise since the nerf of the accelerator, and I hope it's gonna continue to be a popular thing simply because it's more fun, right? Overall, I do wish TDS had more official challenges or a way to track your time and compare it to other players in game, but I doubt that's ever gonna be added due to the casual nature of the game. But who knows, maybe when they will release a versus mode, it will have a rank mode with an elo system or something. That would be interesting, but oh well, a man can only dream. Hey, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I've worked really hard on trying to make this as accurate as possible, but I'm pretty sure I missed some steps and some other small details. But if I did, please correct me in the comments. Like, really, please, I want to make this video generally as a way of addressing feedback to TDS because I really love this game, but I really can't play it in how it's currently being treated. And it doesn't really seem to be going in a better direction either, especially after they announced tower pets or something. Like, that was like, oh wow, we really need this in the game for real. But anyway, also for the direction of the channel, I really have no idea what I want to do in the future. Maybe I'll think of making something, I don't know. But it's like really hard because 95% of everyone who ever subscribed is a Roblox player. So making something different will totally make me lose people. So yeah, it's kind of hard, but I don't know. Maybe I'll eventually find something. I don't really know. Maybe I'll find my own niche, but for now, I don't think I want to do Roblox content again because Roblox itself is breaking every other day because the servers suck and other issues. TDS itself is not really in a better point either, but who knows, maybe in like 1 year the game will be actually somewhat balanced. I don't really know, but yeah, until then, I don't think I'm gonna touch the game that much. Like, I'll probably still play it here and then, but I definitely don't want to make videos on it. I don't feel nice playing it and recording it, especially if I want to grind a hard challenge or something, because it just doesn't feel worth it. Even Rag Battlefield doesn't really feel rewarding because it's so RNG. Like, goddamn, dude. And I did try 4 seasons, but that map is fucking balls, dude. Like, the ending part is just so ass. Like, if someone is insane enough, then go ahead, but I'll probably not try to do it because it's just way too RNG reliant. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you watched until there, I don't know why the fuck you're still here, but hey, thank you. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Take care.